In this week's Parasha, Parashat Shemini, we get a very rare occurrence in Sefer Vayikra, which is a narrative portion. In this brief narrative, Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aharon HaKohen, bring forth a teveret, which is ultimately rejected by God, and he kills both of them. Now, this entire tragic episode has a lot of ambiguities and curiosities. First and foremost, why is it that Nadav and Avihu were killed? Now, growing up, I'm sure many of us were taught that the reason Nadav and Avihu were killed was because they were in the Mishkan and offering a teveret while drunk. Hence, the Torah, or more specifically, God tells Aharon very shortly thereafter that it is asur to be drunk while doing the avodah. However, the Peshat is a little less inclined towards that direction. What it says explicitly is that they brought forth a strange fire that God did not command them to bring. Now, what makes this fire strange? Well, I think a great way of looking at this, and this is building on an idea that other members of the Khadura have said in weeks past, which is obviously the most famous concept that we had fixed the word or adjective zara to in Judaism is avodah zara, which is normally translated as idolatry, but in a more plain or literal sense, it means foreign or strange, or to be exact, non-prescribed worship. And in this particular instance, they are explicitly providing a teveret that is not in accordance with the law, that God did not command them to do. So in that sense, it's perfectly straightforward as to why God killed them. Doesn't mean we have to be fully embrace that, but at the end of the day, that is what the text itself says is the reason that they died. Of course, we're then left with a different question about Nadav and Avihu's motivations. Now, the version of the narrative in which they're drunk, and then in a drunken stupor bring the teveret, and as a result they're killed due to their drunkenness, has some merit if you take out the part about them being drunk, which is to say that the whole point and context in which this narrative appears is during Hanukkah Mishkan, and the inaugural ceremony of the Mishkan, where it is a tremendously festive occasion, and it's cause for celebration, for rejoicing. Korbanot are brought. Aharon blesses the entire people. Moshe and Aharon do it, bless them again. It's all a great time, and Nadav and Avihu, in my mind, are caught up in the moment. They have embraced the celebratory atmosphere, and they've just kind of assumed that, oh, this is not necessarily a prescribed teveret, but because fits the spirit of the day, as it were, that this is the appropriate thing to do, even though they might have or might not have known that this was a forbidden offering. And those best intentions, of course, as the famous saying goes, the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions. And this is another example of that, where they really wanted to sanctify the name of God. Hence, a few psukim later, where Moshe tells Aharon in the name of God, Mikrovai Ekadesh, and many of the Mefarshim understand the Krovai in this context to refer to Nadav and Avihu, referring to the fact that they were still Kadoshim, even though they made this egregious error, and even though they died for it, that they still went in with the best of intentions. However, having the right intentions isn't sufficient. It's good, I'm not suggesting that anyone do anything with any mitzvah or any Torah law with the improper intentions. But intentions, or good intentions, don't give you the power, or anyone, the power or authority to override the letter of the law. And that ultimately was the mistake of Nadav and Avihu, that they were convinced that in that moment that they were doing the appropriate thing, that in that moment it didn't really matter what the exact letter of the law was, as they were carrying out its spirit and embracing the energy of the day. But ultimately, in a tragic event, whereas it describes at the very end of Parasha that and describes how a fire went out from God onto the altar and it consumed the offerings. And two pasukim later describes and it uses the same exact language to describe God ending the lives of Nadav and Avihu. And that entire atmosphere, that moment which should have been their greatest triumph, that they were really at the top of the mountain, comes crashing down because they were, unfortunately, too convinced of what they felt is right rather than what actually was. Wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.